here on the Association Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Thompson, checking in with you today. It is Tuesday afternoon. And actually, it's Wednesday afternoon, and we're less than 24 hours away from the NBA trading deadline. The deadline will be passing right around 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And as we get closer to the actual deadline, there's so many different things going on across the league, and especially down here last night, the Cleveland Cavaliers was actually in Orlando as they took on the Orlando Magic last night. And really, the team, if you watched it on television last night, it just was a tale of two parts of the game. There was the beginning part of the game where Tyronn Lue was on the bench, and there was a part when Tyronn Lue left with an illness. The difference was the Cavaliers were up by 17 points at the time. It had at least as many as 21 with Lue behind the bench. Lue left with an undisclosed illness, and the team completely fell apart. And when I say fell apart, it wasn't pretty. It was to the point where the Cavaliers scored 9 points in the fourth quarter. And to put it in perspective, LeBron James have two great stats. LeBron James had no rebounds and no assists after halftime. He had 10 rebounds and 5 assists at the break and had nothing in the second half and only had 2 points. Or the other key statistic that you look at is the Cavs scored 31 points in the second half. Jonathan Simmons scored 29 by himself. Simmons has 22 points in the third quarter, which was the second highest number since Tracy McGrady scored 25 in the quarter in his 60-point game. The Magic won 116-98, which has basically been the entire category point for the Magic. Not the Magic, but for the Cavs over the last couple of weeks. They had a point where they were winning so many games, and Isaiah Thomas was brought back in the lineup. Thomas was inserted to the lineup not even with less than 5 games into his return, and the Cavs have sputtered ever since. The Cavs look extremely old, and they look extremely disorganized, dysfunctional, and the locker room doesn't feel right. A team that's normally known for his laughing and joking does not feel right now, and the chemistry of this team is at an all-time low. LeBron James said that he's here for the long haul, not waiving his no-trade clause. He said he has no intentions or no purpose, no idea of waiving the trade clause. He is here with the team for the duration of this season. Keyword, this season. So, with less than 24 hours to go, what can the Cavs really do? Some people say blow the whole thing up, try to get rid of as many pieces as possible. Great, wonderful. But if you see the albatross of contracts on this roster, it's kind of hard to move pieces without moving the most important piece that's holding up a lot of the process, which is the Brooklyn unprotected #1 pick, which is the way the Brooklyn Nets are playing. It could be anywhere from 5 to 7, maybe 9. I think it's slated. I think 9 as they're recording this podcast right now before we start getting into ping pong balls. But in a draft class that's considered to be very deep, this pick means a lot to the Cavs because if LeBron James decides to go away and go off to greener pastures in July, and you trade that pick, you literally are just building around Kevin Love, and then at this point you have to re-sign Isaiah Thomas. Now, what moves can the Cavs really essentially make? Well, let's be honest with yourselves. If you're any of the 29 other teams in the NBA, are you really wanting to take on J.R. Smith's contract? Smith looked great for the first 6 minutes last night, knocked down 4 3-pointers, had 12 points in the early going, and shot 4 of 4 in the very opening of the game. At that point, he did nothing else the rest of the game. So you have Tristan Thompson with the albatross of a contract, I think still owed $16 million per season over the next few, as your center who has no offensive game and is really known for his hustle rebounding. A better version of Bismack Biyombo without the defensive ability. Okay, that's 2. Now, do you want to pick up Mon Shumpert's contract? A guy like Shumpert, who's a very, very solid defender, has been hurt most of the season. Shot has really been falling, and really has been kind of like he's now currently out of the rotation in Cleveland. Okay, that's another option. Are you picking up Derrick Rose, who went 0 of 7 last night from the floor? Still doesn't like the Derrick Rose of old, and will never be the Derrick Rose of old. He's pretty much like a broke down car right now. It's been wrecked too many times. You're not getting much for Derrick Rose either. That's just off your bench. Jay Crowder's shot is still in Boston. Isaiah Thomas's attitude has basically disrupted this entire locker room. So you have a lot of really bad pieces, and the worst part is Kevin Love is out until probably sometime in March because of his hand problem. Has kept him out for the majority. We'll keep him out of the All-Star game and also other parts of the regular season. The Cavs are in turmoil. LeBron James looks a little bit slower than normal. Some people think he might have lost a little bit of the step when it comes to getting around defenders, but he's still LeBron James. It was a real key point in the game last night. If you pay attention, there was a stretch where LeBron James got switched on Kem Birch, big man for the Orlando Magic. Now, Birch, he's not a prototypical center, even though he is a center. He's about 6'8", 6'9", about 255, 260, but he plays the center position. And LeBron James is considered one of the greatest athletes in the entire league, and LeBron could not get around Birch. I mean, he tried his usual dribble stutter step and could not get around Birch, which was a trying tale that maybe LeBron started to slow down a little bit. At this point in time, even LeBron knows this. He doesn't want to admit to it, but he knows this is potentially a situation out in Cleveland that's not going to be to his advantage. Now, what can the Cavs do? Really, like I said, realistically, you're going to have to move on these contracts. Or they have to find a ticket for Isaiah Thomas. Now, the rumor has that the Charlotte Hornets have inquired about Isaiah Thomas returning back with Kemba Walker. But the thing with Charlotte is that they have told any team that is dealing with the Charlotte Hornets, you are going to take back one of these contracts. And when I say one of the contracts, that includes Nicholas Batum's $24 million, Dwight Howard's $23.8 million extension next summer, contract for next season. You're taking back Marvin Williams. You're taking back Cody Zeller. You're taking back, one of these contracts that Charlotte can't go, maybe even Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. One of these contracts has to go, and Charlotte at the same time is right at the danger zone and the danger point of being in the luxury tax. Being in the luxury tax is a dangerous proposition because Jordan said it himself. He is not paying a luxury tax for a team that's not contending for a championship. Remember that. If you're not contending for a championship, why would you put yourself deep in a tax paying something you don't want to deal with? So what other options can Cleveland look to? I mean, they've talked about DeAndre Jordan for the last month or so. That deal might be dead in the water because Lou Williams just freed up right before this podcast was taped to a 3-year extension, which is weird because at the same time, the Clippers, they traded Blake Griffin last week to the Pistons, and we had a podcast about that. But they traded Blake Griffin, and they're still in the talks of trading DeAndre Jordan. So you re-sign Lou Williams? I don't know. It's kind of a weird signing, but Williams is going to be, he should be considered as an all-star this year, putting up tremendous numbers. But it's just real interesting how Williams is now signed and traded, as we signed to a 3-year deal, but could be right out the door like Blake Griffin next season if things weren't going to go right. And Jerry West is still trying to acquire first-round picks. Maybe he could not have gotten one for Williams in any type of deal. But we did have a trade today. Speaking of the Charlotte Hornets, they acquired Willie Hernangomez from the New York Knicks in exchange for Johnny O'Brien and 2 second-round picks. Now, in the grand scheme of things with the NBA, when you trade for second-round picks, you hope that second-round picks do well. When the Knicks drafted Willie Hernangomez last year, and he stepped in the role, he was second-team All-Rookie, averaging 8 points and 7 rebounds a game. That's a good thing. The Knicks buried this guy and kept him out of the rotation. They put Kyle O'Quinn, they put Enes Kanter, they used Porzingis in front of him in the rotation, and now they shipped him off to Charlotte, where he's going to be in another problem because Dwight Howard and Cody Zeller, and the returning Cody Zeller, are still in front of him in the rotation. Hernangomez is a tremendous hustle player, can get a lot of does a lot of little things, and he's, to me, a solid player. I mean, he should be able to deserve minutes. He qualified for those minutes last summer. Now, with the Knicks returning Johnny O'Brien, O'Brien's a guy that's going to have a chance to step in and get some minutes with the season-ending injury to Kristaps Porzingis. He's going to be spelling Michael Beasley at times. Besides Lance Thomas playing at the power forward, you're going to see Johnny get some serious minutes. He's a good shot blocker for his size, like I said. And the 2 second-round picks, you're hoping to land something. But why would you trade for second-round picks when you have a second-round pick that's already successful? Listen, Knicks fans, the playoffs are now done. You're not going to get anywhere. So I wouldn't say sell off all your assets because you're not going to sell Tim Hardaway. You're not going to sell Porzingis. I don't think you're going to sell Enes Kanter. So at this point in time, the Knicks need to start losing. Because if you start losing, now they're currently 10th in the standings right now, and their schedule's not favorable. But if you get that top 5 or 6, and you can land that super prospect, I mean, at this point you have Frank Nicholson at the point guard position. If you're picking at 5 or 6, I'm not saying Trae Young would be the option, but hey, you might be able to get your hands on Michael Porter, might get your hands on Colin Sexton. You might be able to even think about Bridges out of Villanova to fill your shooting guard needs. Porter can probably slide into the 3. If Hardaway's at your 2, you can use, there's so many different weapons you can use. I mean, I don't think the combination of DeAndre Ayton or Marvin Bagley or Doncic will be there. I mean, of course, the temptation would be to take Trae Young, if he's available. But if you're in that top 5, Michael Porter is a great option. I mean, I said both Bridges kids, maybe even Jaren Jackson Jr. if you want some more shot blocking from the 3 position. You have some options there if the Knicks can somehow tank. But if you're picking at 10, maybe 11, you're not going to get that top 7 or 8 player that can potentially change your team around. So let's take a look at some things before we jump off this podcast that I've been seeing around the league all day today. The Phoenix Suns teams have been inquired about some of the Suns' young players, and they have a boatload of them. I don't think Devin Booker is even on the market, but guys like TJ Warren could be an option. Marquise Chris, even though people out of Phoenix saying that Chris is not untouchable. You have Alex Len, you have Dragon Bender, you have a whole bunch of different options out there, and the Suns could package a couple of these players up and maybe go get a guy like maybe Kemba Walker and Charlotte if that's the case. Alan Williams, I didn't even mention. Williams was tremendous last year, when guys were injured. Or playoff team could be looking at Tyson Chandler or Jared Dudley out of Phoenix. There could be one of those teams that could be making a move. Word out of Portland that they did acquire about DeAndre Jordan, which is kind of an interesting fit because I don't think Jordan and Nurkic would actually fit together, and I'm not sure what Jordan would do in Portland, but that's a possibility, and that's been inquired about all week. Now, the other thing with DeAndre Jordan is that he was inquired about was the Washington Wizards. Martin Gortat sent out a tweet the other day about a great team victory, and John Wall LOL'd it because Wall is out for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Now, before last night's loss to the Sixers, the team had been playing some of their best basketball, passing the ball at a high rate. Had a chance to see Washington on Saturday where they just basically passed through the Orlando Magic, literally blowing them out of the water. But at the same time, they were just getting assists everywhere. I think they finished with 35 assists as a team, which is real interesting because Wall is one of the top 4 or 5 assist guys in the entire league, and also one of the few pass-first point guards that you're going to find that can score the basketball in the league. Let's not get this twisted, Wizard fans. You're not better without John Wall. Wall makes your team better. It's great to see this team playing well without John Wall, but you cannot win without John Wall in the playoffs. Like they had much of a chance anyway to win the Eastern Conference, but Wall does make a difference. Now, speaking of Wall and trades, or the Wizards and trades, they've talked about DeAndre Jordan. The really asking price would be probably more Martin Gortat and Kelly Oubre, because Otto Porter cannot be moved, because Otto Porter can deny any trade because this is the first year of his new deal. The only place he cannot be traded to without his consent is Brooklyn, because he signed the offer sheet with Brooklyn this summer. Washington could be one of those teams that could possibly pick up one of these guys that could be on the way, not the way wire, but like one of the unknown names. But to me, in my opinion, tomorrow's trade deadlines could be really quiet. I don't think any big names are going to go anywhere. Atlanta has sat Marco Bellinelli in hopes of trading him before the deadline. They're all intention of moving him. Tyreek Evans is being chased about 4 or 5 different teams. I think the Celtics are in the clubhouse in the lead for him. And the Grizzlies are really trying to get a first-round pick for Tyreek Evans, who's going to be a huge help for some teams down the stretch. Other guys that potentially could be moved or teams that could be buying could be the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers won again last night over the Wizards. Could be looking for another veteran piece, maybe a backup point guard, somebody who can spell some minutes from Ben Simmons off that point guard position and help TJ McConnell, and also another outside shooter. You can never have enough shooting in the playoffs, especially in the Eastern Conference. Outside of that, really, there's teams that are trying to buy players to get rid of salary cap situations. You see a lot more teams who have cap room, like your Hawks or your Suns, that potentially can take on salary and add draft picks because they actually have the cap room. Before I go, there was an article on ESPN yesterday saying this could be potentially one of the worst free agent years ever. Not because of talent, but it's because of the fact that nobody has any money and nobody's willing to spend money, because everybody's looking to spend money next summer. And when a lot of these crazy contracts that people signed 2 years ago, when the cap went up exponentially, go off the books, like guys like Luol Deng and Mozgov and those contracts, like Brook Lopez, those contracts come off the books. Don't forget the Los Angeles Lakers could be also a seller as well too, even though they've already said they're not chasing LeBron James this summer. So we're going to check yourself out. This is check out for the show tonight. Check out the website, which is aroundassociation.com. New articles will be going up this week. I'm trying to get everything together. Also, check us out on the Facebook page. Check me out on FloridaNationalNews.com, and also check me out on Twitter at NBADT29. So tomorrow's podcast, I will record before the Magic take on the Atlanta Hawks, because the trade deadline will be at 3 p.m. So I'll record it sometime tomorrow afternoon and post it everywhere on social media. So this is Danny Thompson for Around the Association podcast. We'll catch you guys out tomorrow.